Good morning. Brita Wallace here, family and parent educator with Wallace Family Ministry. We are on day 6 of our Love Dare Challenge for parents. And today we are focusing on love is not selfish. Okay, so if you have not gotten your books yet, make sure you do that. You can get them very, very quickly on Audible. You can probably rent them from your local library as well. You can order them on Amazon, or you can get them on lifeway.com as well. So you want to make sure that if you're listening to them on Audible, or if you're borrowing them from the library, or listening to them on audio in any way, shape, or form, that you want to be able to have, or you want to get a notebook as well, so you can answer the questions that are asked at the end of each chapter. So for today's chapter, there's the dare, and then some questions, and then more area for you to write. So they're so fruitful, especially when you are completing the dares and then you're able to look back and see, hey, I answered these questions, this is how I showed up for my child, and this is the fruit that I have seen. And if you're doing the dares, you're going to see the fruit. So it's really awesome to be able to look back and see how much progress you've made in the relationship in your home with your children. So let's get started. All right, so as I said, day 6 is love is not selfish, okay? So do nothing from selfishness or empty conceit, but with humility of mind, regard one another as more important than yourselves. Philippians 2:3. Children are God's homework assignments to parents. We are commissioned to love, teach, and train them up for successful adulthood. But this process requires so much careful focus and attention. A father or a mother must daily set aside something very specific that will otherwise stand in their way, their own selfishness, okay? So selfishness is like a disease that suffocates our capacity to love. While love asks us to deny ourselves for the sake of another, selfishness demands we put ourselves first at their expense. When we choose to be self-centered, we become less kind and content, more needy, sensitive, and demanding, more unsatisfiable. Moodiness and impatience, laziness and irresponsibility are only selfishness in disguise. Okay, so we all struggle with this in some fashion. We all struggle with laziness at times. We can be impatient at times. We can definitely be irresponsible at times, right? And moody. We can definitely be moody sometimes as well. So it's something that we all struggle with. We just have to say, like, hey, like, I am often moody, right? Or I'm often irritable, or I am often really impatient, or I can tend to be really lazy, or I can tend to be really irresponsible. I just don't like a lot of responsibility, right? So I'm not saying those things specific for me. I think if I had to choose the one that really I struggle with the most, if I'm going to be real and honest with you, it would probably be impatience, which is something I've been practicing a lot lately because I really want to build that muscle. Patience is not something that we either have or we don't. Patience is something we have to practice. We have to learn it. It's not something that comes natural to any of us. So it's something that we really have to practice, and it's hard to learn it sometimes. Sometimes I think, especially when we are practicing patience, is when we are tested in patience the most, right? So everybody always makes that joke, like, don't pray for patience because then you're tested in it. But we need to be tested in it to be able to practice exercising it. I always say patience is a muscle. It's not really a muscle, but I just say that about things that really need to be practiced, because you can look at it in that way where if we're not working our muscles, then they go into atrophy. Well, if we're not working on practicing love, practicing patience, demonstrating these things and working on them to get better at them, then they go in atrophy too, and we kind of just slip back into old patterns and habits. But the point of doing the dares is that we want to change our habits. We want to change the way that we do things and our everyday responses to the people in our lives. We want to change the way that we communicate. We want to change the way that we are showing up for our children, right? And we want to do that for the better. We want to see the fruit from these things that we are practicing. So I definitely struggle with patience the most, and it's something, again, that I'm practicing. And I encourage you that if one of these you struggle with, or maybe more than one, and that's all right, and you don't have to come out and say that or anything, but you can really just think about that and say, like, which of these do I really, really struggle with the most? Maybe I have a few of them. Well, recognizing that you have this struggle and that the root cause of that is selfishness is the first step to being able to make positive changes. So being able to say, hey, like, I struggle with impatience sometimes. And that's probably my biggest selfish ambition. You know, it's my biggest selfish trait of selfishness that lives within me. So I'm recognizing that. I'm recognizing that that stems from selfishness, and I want to do something about it. So I'm going to practice patience and think about what that answer is for you, so that you can say, hey, like, I'm going to work on my mood if it's moodiness, right? Where, like, being moody to our loved ones is a selfish act, right? It's me valuing how I'm feeling over your well-being, right? And how you're feeling, or just your benefit, right? I'm valuing me at your expense. So thinking about those things, coming up with the answer, and really working on that specific area to help us to not be selfish is a great step in the right direction. So almost every wrong and sinful act can be traced back to a selfish motive, okay? Almost every wrong and sinful act can be traced back to a selfish motive. And if you think about that, when people, like, kill somebody in a fit of rage, you know, maybe it's a hate crime, or maybe it's a love triangle, you know, or something like that. And those are just some, you know, common things that happen in our society. If you think about where that stems from, you can think about, yeah, that does stem from a selfish motive. They are not getting what they want, or what they think is right, you know, so they're going to go out and they're going to do what they want to do based on their own selfish ambition, right? They're taking life literally into their own hands, and that is very selfish, right? So unselfish people make amazing friends, spouses, and parents. They're willing to table their own demands and lose themselves in the joy of loving, giving, and serving. The more we learn to daily turn away from our own selfishness, the stronger, more lovable, and fulfilled we can become. So it's not just that, hey, we're sacrificing our own selfishness for other people and that's going to make us miserable. No, that's going to make us feel fulfilled. When we change our hearts to practice giving love by giving and serving makes us feel good. And a lot of times we don't realize that, or we don't think that, because we're thinking with selfish ambition, where we're thinking, oh, well, if I do that, then this is going to take this away from me. But doing that gives us such this sense of just fulfillment, and learning how to love and demonstrating love to our loved ones, or even just people, strangers. That gives us a sense of it just fills us up. It's fulfilling, right? It gives us this sense of completeness in some aspects, where we're like, yes, this is just something that I did that made me feel good. And it's not taking away from you. You know, those are selfish thoughts and those are lies, thinking that it's going to take something away from you. Yes, maybe we have to make sacrifices sometimes to do those things. Say you signed up to serve in an area of the community, and then your friend's having this really amazing 4th of July party, and it's on the same exact day, and now you're like, man, I really wish I didn't sign up to serve, because I really want to go to this party that's supposed to be epic and amazing, and you know, there's going to be all this fun things to do there, and great food and dancing, and what if you can make room for both? Don't give up what you are committed to doing for your own selfish ambition. So yeah, you can feel bummed because you committed to serve, but I'm telling you, once you go and you do that, you're going to feel good about that. You know, you're going to feel good about giving back, because it's just how we are designed. It makes us feel good. So society teaches us to focus on our personal feelings and desires as our highest priority. But our children, they're constantly showing up, right? They need to be fed, they need to be cleaned, they need to be led, they need to be taught. And this requires a lot of work from us. It's exhausting. Parenthood is such a blessing. It's so rewarding. And at times, it is exhausting, right? If we're being honest, it's exhausting. Sometimes you're like, especially if you have a sick child, just think about, I remember one time Jack, my oldest 4-year-old, had a stomach bug, and anytime he's had a stomach bug, he's had 3 in his life now. 2 when he was a baby. 1 lasted 3 hours. It wasn't so bad, but it was the first one, and that was kind of terrifying. The second one, because he was puking in the car, and it was just not fun. The second one lasted 7 hours, and he did not know how to, you know, get sick in a bucket or the toilet, and he was terrified. He was really afraid of like what was going on, and he just would not stop clinging to me. So I'm trying, you know, to get him to get sick in a bucket or the toilet, and it's not working. It's all over me. It ends up getting all over my house. So that lasted 7 hours, and whew, a lot of times they last like 24 to 48 hours. Thank God that it didn't, because that was exhausting. It was exhausting to deal with. It was exhausting on many levels, emotionally, because my baby was screaming, crying. He was terrified of what was going on with him. And you know, terrified to actually like get sick in this weird bowl or whatever, you know, either way you look at it, whether it was the bucket or the toilet. And then so we had to deal with that all night, and picking up and cleaning up and trying to get that done, making sure one person's with him at all times, because he literally was just sick for like that 7 hours straight pretty much. And then having to literally clean everything, my whole entire house the next day, still with a baby who was not feeling great. He wasn't getting sick anymore, but now we were really working on, you know, replacing electrolytes and trying to get him fed. And my husband was working 12 hours, so it was exhausting. It was an exhausting day. So parenthood sometimes can be exhausting, especially when we have things come up where, like, I had already worked all morning, right? I wasn't expecting that to happen. We're never expecting those things. They just come out of nowhere. I was already exhausted, up at 5 a.m. And man, it was just, it was exhausting. And you're like, oh, I don't want to deal with this anymore. And sometimes we don't have a choice. When we're in a situation like that, we don't have a choice. And if we're doing the right things for our kids, we have to make those choices where we have to say, okay, well, I have to do this anyway, because this is what's best for my child, whether I want to or not, right? So, you know, this goes on to say that, you know, when children are crying, we want it to be quiet, right? They start wars with one another when we're just really seeking peace, right, at that moment. And They can knock on, locked bedroom or bathroom doors, in the most inopportune times, right? So we can zero in on the weight of these responsibilities that our kids come with as something that limits their ability to do whatever, it limits our ability, to do whatever we want if we want to, but what our children actually do is uniquely reveal our own selfishness in living color, and they invite us to live outside of its constant demands, okay? So this is really one of the uncommon purposes of parenting. God strategically uses our children to help us become less self-centered, less self-absorbed, and more loving, like Him, all right? So He stretches us and matures us with plenty of opportunities to deny ourselves and demonstrate sacrificial love and patience towards our children. And this is what He does for us. And the thing is that it says He gives us opportunities. It doesn't say He forces us to do these things. We have free will. He gave us free will, and we have a choice. So He's going to give us opportunities, and then we get to decide how we want to handle them and how we're going to show up, right? So if we're thinking, hey, like, I want to be less selfish, I want to work on these things, I want to demonstrate this part of myself to my children in a more loving way, we can practice doing that, right? By recognizing where our selfish ambitions are, how they show up in us, and working on those things, and changing those habits and patterns and creating new ones. So we see this, throughout Scripture when Cain kills his brother. Hannah, gives us a wonderful picture of how to wisely view our children. She was unable to have a child of her own, and she humbly prayed and petitioned the Lord with all of her heart, and He blessed her with Samuel. And out of gratefulness, Hannah unselfishly dedicated her son back to the Lord, and God used him in mighty ways to bless their nation and counsel its future kings, okay? So the same thing with Mary and Joseph. They dedicated Jesus in the temple back to God, and then they consistently honored God with how they parented Him over the years, recognizing Him as belonging to God and not themselves, right? So refuse to let your selfishness get in the way of what God has called you to do. Otherwise, you will tend to treat your children as an irritation, worry about them like another possession, or worship them as an idol, okay? So thank God for granting us the daily opportunity to love our children unselfishly and to grow stronger, wiser, and more Christ-like in the process, okay? So I want to say that we are teaching this the way that it's meant from a biblical perspective, but these concepts and these ideas that Stephen and Alex Kendrick have in the Love Dares, they, no matter what you believe, you can take these concepts and you can say, like, this is true. This is when we're, serving and giving, and even when we have a belief in something, it's healthy for us. There are studies that show this, that it's healthy for us when we are practicing unselfish acts. It actually does create more happiness within us. So being less moody and irritable and unselfish, these are good things, right? So whether you believe in God or you don't, or you believe in something else, this is a judgment-free zone. These are my beliefs, and that's totally fine. I respect you and what you believe, but I just want to make sure you know that this is a safe place, and that these concepts, no matter what you believe, are still going to change the dynamic of your home if you're practicing them, and they're still really good things to learn how to show up for our family. So I just wanted to throw that out there, and we are going to jump into the dare. So take some time in prayer to identify and push aside any hurdles of selfishness in your own life that may be keeping you from loving your children more effectively. And like I said earlier, if if you don't want to pray on it, if that's not something that you like to do, or you believe in doing, then you can focus on what those things are, where you struggle with selfishness and what that looks like in you, right? And how that's keeping you from loving your children more effectively. And then purpose to dedicate your children back to the Lord as a gift to Him. So that is the dare for the day. If you don't have this belief, you can work on that area of selfishness, or those areas of selfishness that you struggle with, and say like, hey, I'm really going to work on not being moody today. I'm going to work on not being irritable today or impatient today. And we're going to continue this. It's something we're going to practice doing so that we can put our children's needs ahead of our own wants and desires, okay? And I didn't say their wants, because our children can tend to developmentally, they're just naturally selfish. They think about themselves. That's why we have to teach them not to be that way. So I thank you guys for joining in today. I'm just going to go over our key points that I really want you to get from the study today, and then we are going to see you tomorrow for day 7. Okay, so children are God's homework assignment to parents. We are commissioned to love them for successful adulthood. This takes careful focus and attention, right? Selfishness is like a disease that suffocates our ability to love. It says, I am putting myself first at your expense. Every wrong and sinful act can be traced back to selfish actions. Love finds satisfaction in bringing kindness, health, and blessings to others, okay? Unselfish people make amazing friends, spouses, and parents. Children are a lot of work. They reveal our own selfishness in living color, and this invites us to live outside of our selfish demands. Demonstrate unselfish and sacrificial love to our children as God demonstrates to us. We need to take full responsibility for our children's care and their nurture. We need a separate identity from our kids. We shouldn't be idling them, okay? A lot of times we can find ourselves idling our kids and really doing every single thing for them, giving them into every one of their wants and desires, which is not teaching them good life skills and characteristics. And we need to say no to what we want to say yes. We want to say no when we want to say, we need to say yes when we want to say no to the needs of our children. I wrote that backwards, so don't read it. Just listen. And I thank you guys for tuning in today. I appreciate you. Make sure that you subscribe to my channel and like it, and get your books if you haven't. Thank you, and God bless, and I will see you tomorrow.